Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages.
Hi, this is Cassandra Lane. I'm the author of We Are Bridges, a memoir. You're listening to Mysterious Goings On with Alex Greenwood.
America is addicted to being addicted. And during the pandemic, COVID has accelerated the addictive mindset. Too many of us have used one or more things, whether it's smoking cigarettes, vaping, having sex, drugging, drinking, eating, gambling, shopping, or any of a dozen or more unhealthy and sometimes life-threatening, possibly illegal, career-ending, family-damaging habits. We're caught in a maze like a lab rat, and it's time to exit the maze, according to a breakthrough book by a former addict who, as a mental health counselor, has successfully treated more than 6,000 patients during the past 3 decades. She has found what has proven to work in treating addiction. I can't wait to learn more. I've got many, many questions for Dr. Donna Marks. Dr. Donna Marks, welcome to Mysterious Goings On.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's my pleasure. You know, it's interesting. We get a lot of different authors on the show. You may know this is a show primarily about creativity and writing and books, but I'm fascinated because when I first learned about you and your book, and I don't mean it as if you just made this up to be creative, but it's a very creative approach to the subject of addiction.
Thank you very much. It came about from years of experience, all kinds of attempts in my own sobriety and helping other people and finding out what does and does not work.
Is one of the primary situations that people have with addiction that they don't fully understand they're addicted to something?
That's the main problem. I think we've become so lured into this this system that we're supposed to feel good all the time. And we can feel good all the time, by the way, but not through artificial means. So there's this, it starts off early on with this sense that something's missing. And then we're constantly bombarded with, this will make you feel better. This is good for you. This will give you the lift. And of course, all those things are just substitutes for what really would make you feel good.
Yeah, I've heard it said that a lot of times addictive behavior or substances or what have you is for people who have I feel like they have a hole inside them and they want to fill that hole. But the problem, of course, is that you can't fill that hole forever with alcohol or pot or sex or all these things. Is that kind of a fair metaphor?
Yes, it's a good metaphor. I mean, the more you dig the hole, the bigger it grows. And that's exactly what addiction does. So yeah, you can't fill it. You can only keep expanding it. And then that's why you need more and more and more and more.
But I guess my big question is, how do we know? I mean, do you have to hit rock bottom before you decide, oh my gosh, I'm addicted to something? Or can people step back now, look at your book and go, wait a minute, I might have some issues, or at the very least, I'm near the precipice? Is that something that's possible?
Yes, I think it's very possible, but you have to be willing to get your mind back. If your mind has been hijacked by the wrong way of thinking, and the wrong way of thinking is, I don't feel very good, so I need to go get something to feel better. First of all, you have to be willing to do that, and then you have to be willing to be honest. And the problem with addiction or any kind of, let's just call it bad habit, is that we can't be honest because there's two voices in our head. The one that says, oh, you're fine, you just need to go on a diet, you just need to cut back, you just need to, cool it with this behavior for a while, you're in control. That voice is the voice of addiction, versus the other voice that says, I went on the diet, I lost the weight, but how come I weighed 30 pounds more than I did 2 years ago? That constant, battle going on. So at some point to be honest and say, I really am not controlling this. It's controlling me. And what can I do about it? That's the beginning of being able to get the right help for yourself, whether you do it on your own or you do it with someone.
Well, yeah, and I received some information here when I learned about you that there's some stats that are pretty sobering. That's not, no pun intended, but there are well over 100 million Americans who suffer from an addiction. And of course, on the hit parade, alcohol, opiates, gambling, food, nicotine, shopaholics, sex addicts. And I just want to ask you about that one, though. You're saying approximately 9 million people are sex addicts. I mean, it's a normal human drive to have sex. I mean, is there, I guess I'm not being funny, but how do you know when you're having too much sex or the wrong kind of sex or the addicted sex? Could you elaborate for me?
Right. Well, first of all, we need to differentiate, when people are young, there's a different norm. And sometimes, taking care of those needs is perfectly healthy and normal. This isn't about judgment and all that. But what I'm talking about when I talk about addiction is the definition that you continue to do something despite negative consequences. So when there's a physical problem, an emotional problem, or it's causing a problem in your work or relationships, that's when we're talking about the line has been crossed and it's no longer helpful, it's harmful.
Yeah, so really, you can like kind of pick this menu of different things, but what it gets down to is you're crossing the line when it's harmful, when you're hurting your family, you're hurting yourself, your job, that thing.
There's negative consequences, yes.
Negative consequences, yeah. So let me ask you, you've been very upfront that you have had addiction. Can you just tell us a little bit about that journey, and then we can talk more about your book?
Oh, sure. So I was born into a family with addictions. There was a lot of heavy drinking, eating disorders, obvious sex addictions, alcoholism. And so I was one of these people that those were my role models. And then also I grew up because of mainly because of the alcoholism and codependency in the family. My pain wasn't addressed. So it festered and it grew, that wound that became that invisible hole. And then I was pretty good at just saying, as children, most children see it in their family and they don't want to be like that. But then when that pain is there, the first time that I was at a party and someone offered me a cigarette and I tried it, I totally, had no idea at the time what a cigarette was, what it would do to you, how powerful nicotine is. I had one and it gave me that, I coughed and coughed, but that didn't matter. It gave me that feeling like, oh my God, I feel so good. And then I want another one and another one. And that went on for the next 20 years. I mean, it was just, we're set up, okay? Because number one, we are trying to feel better. And number two, these things are made to be addictive. There's no mistake about it. The nicotine is very powerful. And at the time they were even putting other drugs to make cigarettes more addictive. Sugar, the content and the syrup, it's designed to get you to want more. Alcohol, you don't need as much proof, but we want that to get the buzz. So, it's a combination of just, oh my God, here's the feeling I've been looking for my whole life, even if it's at age 12.
Yeah.
And then, but it's not lasting. So you need more and more and more. And then these things that are made and we're constantly programmed through ads and all that to get us addicted. So I'm not blaming, I'm just saying, this is how it works. And we need to understand it so we can reclaim our own thinking processes and our own bodies and lives.
Yeah, and so much post-traumatic stress disorder can begin at childhood. And I think that a lot of these substances and activities are a balm or something that people turn to just to alleviate the anxiety and those feelings.
Yeah, it's just normal feelings. And rather than being taught when we're young, it's normal to of course, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be at this party or your first day of school or a new friend. And we're all that way. And so, it's okay, just breathe and, go look for someone else who's kind of standing by themselves and ask them some questions about themselves. And then if you're talking to someone else and taking an interest in them, you can't be nervous yourself, but mainly just to be taught that it's okay, it's normal, it's nothing to worry about, it's fine. But what happens is, when we have that pain or that anxiety, which, by the way, I don't believe in anxiety, I call it fear. And so, when you teach children that it's normal to be afraid and here's how you deal with it, then they don't have to go on all these pills later on to calm down their anxiety, or any other means. But for many like myself, the cigarettes led to alcohol, led to drugs, led to, just go down the list. And replace one with another, and then we're stuck. We're trapped. We're trapped in a maze, and we really don't even know we're in a maze, and we certainly don't know how to get out.
Yeah, and let's talk about the maze. I've got so many questions, but let's get to the maze first. Now, you've likened a lot of this situation to, a mouse that's frantically running through a maze in all different directions looking for the cheese, right? That's kind of the set piece here for the book, right?
Right. The addict is always looking for the next quick fix. But also I talk about mice and rats a lot because that's what scientists use to demonstrate human behavior. So there's a lot of metaphorical value there. Yeah, so constantly searching for the cheese, but never finding the cheese, but never finding what you're trying to get, which is that sense of being okay, that sense of feeling full from within, that sense of feeling self-love.
And you've been working with people for 30 years, and you've obviously had great success with this, but you settled on this maze. Now, tell me this though, when did the idea of a book come to you?
Well, it's always been something I've wanted to do my entire career, but I didn't feel like I was ready to do it because, like so many other healers, I didn't feel really healed enough yet to do it. Like I wasn't quite consolidated all the information yet and been able to apply it to myself. So once I felt like all those pieces were in place, like the last few pieces of the puzzle were snapped into place, then the book was ready to be written.
Was it tough? Are you a natural writer, or did it take you a while?
Well, that's a funny question. I am a natural writer. I love to write, but I slept through school, so my grammatical skills, I hired a really good editor to help me with that. So where the commas go and the colons and all that, and the split infinitives, it was like going back to school.
Yeah, Doc, don't feel bad, Doc. I have a degree in writing, and I have to have a really good editor just because, there's just stuff that you can't see of your own work. So
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a little, the book. And so is the book kind of a step-by-step guide for people, or is it more just an open your mind kind of work? I mean, what should people expect if they pick up your book?
So they can expect to understand that they're not alone, that this is not a rare problem. Like addiction is a huge world problem. And it's not only like so many people have become addicted, that it's also the #1 cause of most unnatural deaths and most mental health problems. Now, let me just explain. Heart disease. Now, yes, there's a hereditary component. I'm not denying that, but most people who suffer heart disease and die from it have been consuming large amount of toxins found in alcohol, drugs, sugar, and trans fats. And they've consumed those to the point that it's caused permanent damage to their heart. But you can go right down the list: liver disease, kidney disease, lung disease. All these things are caused by repeatedly abusing the body to the point of causing permanent damage. That is addiction. But who tells them they're addicted? Nobody. Just cut back on your food, cut back on your alcohol. There's just such a tremendous lack of understanding about this severe global crisis. And this is a real crisis. I mean, even during COVID, people that were dying had these secondary illnesses. And yet all the liquor stores are open when nothing else is, so it's just a huge problem. And so that's the one thing that I address in the book, some statistics and facts and researches about that, and help us wake up, each individual to wake up. And then I go through the causes, whether it's early childhood trauma, how to heal that trauma, and then how to replace that with, I believe every addiction is a substitute for love. You're going for the feeling. You're trying to get that feeling of feeling good and feeling love and at one with yourself and other people. But it doesn't last, and it only creates the greater void, as we discussed earlier. So at each chapter, I have exercises to help people really go inward and identify these core issues and then what they can do about them.
So you've got actionable steps here. Now, let me be clear though, and I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but I don't know if a book can ever replace somebody like yourself in person, if you really are in trouble, I mean, you can read a book and it will help you, but I'm sure you assume or hope that these folks who really are in dire straits would go to a professional like yourself.
Well, there's lots of help available, and I list all the different forms of help, and I also list the shortcomings of each type of help, because one of the problems in the helping field is, you go to your doctor and he prescribes you a medication, or a psychiatrist prescribes you a very addictive benzodiazepine, and and then you go to a therapist, and the therapist tries to help you heal your emotional pain, but you're self-medicating, or you have a drinking problem, and the therapist has no idea about addiction, and so how much do you drink? Oh, I have a couple of drinks every night, no big deal. Okay, well, let's proceed with therapy. But you have to know how to recognize these things, how to ask the right questions, and so often treatment variables work against each other, undermine one another, and it just becomes another maze of addiction called treatment. So I talk about that too. So yes, you need help, but you want to make sure you get competent help. And also you want to be sure that, I think it's important to be around other people who are also in the recovery process, because you reinforce each other, just consider it like another hobby or social interest. If you love classical music and you love reading books, and you join groups where you can enrich that experience, it's the same thing when you're trying to get healthy. That you want to be around people that are in that mindset, and they share with each other and they support each other. Very important.
On the flip side too, you got to be able to identify enablers in your life, don't you?
Absolutely. And enablers have an addiction. It's called codependency. And, I'm not feeling okay with just myself. So if I focus on you and fix you, then maybe you'll be the parent that I didn't have. And so, it can be a vicious cycle, and I don't mean to sabotage you, but I can't help but say, I just don't like those new friends you have. And I don't think you're really an alcoholic, you just, overdo it every once in a while, and I liked you better before you stopped drinking, or I don't like you being on this diet, you're grouchy all the time, So the enablers often are protecting themselves. And I'm not blaming anybody. Please don't think I'm blaming. I'm just saying that we don't understand the dynamics. And once we can see it, and then we don't have to choose from those places of fear anymore, we can be supportive of ourselves and one another.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, let me jump to a couple of thoughts I've had here. So I went through a phase, a couple of things I did that were probably borderline for a while. I have a just like every human being, I have a rich history of dysfunction starting in childhood, things like that. But one thing I did, and I think I did, I did replace a lot of behaviors with exercise. Now, here was the good thing. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. The good thing was, though, I lost weight. I got in the best shape of my life. I looked great. I felt great. It didn't last. I could only do it for about 3 years, and then things started, just, life catches up, that kind of thing. But I wanted to ask you if it's basically a net benefit to be addicted to something like exercise, is that still bad? As long as you're just going to the gym and you're not like going to the gym instead of, I don't know, being around your family or.
Yeah, well, exercise is really important. What you need to do is love yourself. So taking good care of your body and treating it like a sacred temple is certainly important. So exercise is good. But what happens is, like for me, when I quit smoking, I said, well, now I need to get my lungs healthy again. So I started like these ridiculous long distance bicycling. And then later, I'd never run in my life. I started running a little bit and wound up in a marathon 6 months later. This is addiction, okay? And so what I'm doing is I'm still going for that fix, still trying to get that high. And of course, I still exercise now, but it's in moderation, 4 or 5 times a week. And, it's reasonable and healthy exercise. It's not that driven thing. I'm not doing it as a primary thing to get something. It is something I'm doing to care for myself and to take good care of myself.
Yeah. And I think that's where I finally, that's where I finally settled. I was like, I don't need exercise 7 days a week anymore, and even though I did gain back a little weight, I still feel good about myself. I look better. Although, the last year, COVID-19, I literally gained 19 pounds over COVID, but I'm working on it. But It's a true story, but I really, I feel like I did change there, but it really did help me. It helped me realize a couple of things: is that I am not powerless over substances, and by the way, folks listening, I didn't have like a heroin addiction or anything like that. I just had probably some normal things everybody has, but it was probably getting to a point, I think, where it was like, danger, maybe be careful here,
Right.
But I think I'm good there with that. And I've had people who were addicted to things in my family too, so I'm very careful about certain things that I know led to shortened lifespan for a lot of folks. But I like what you're saying though about how there is a price that is exacted by what you ingest and by your behavior. You drink way too much, your liver eventually is going to say, I can't help you anymore here, right? You smoke too long, your lungs are going to probably be, a mess, and so on. But let me ask you something that's not necessarily physical. What do you think about social media addiction?
Well, that can be, again, that's a wonderful tool. I mean, we need to utilize it if we're going to be business people, just like we need to eat food and we need to exercise. But again, are you doing it to the point that there's negative consequences? And that's where we need to like be aware of moderation, but also like, what are you trying to get? What are you trying to fill here? And those are things that are not going to fill the void. They will not fill the void.
Yeah, social media really is, I think, you're whether you think about it this way or not, I think you're asking for affirmation from people you've never met, to a large degree. And I went through a little bit of that. I think I wanted to be accepted. I want to be seen as somebody who knew what he was doing. We want to be told, oh, aren't you interesting, blah blah blah. But
well, that's a real
I think,
setup, because there's going to be one person who tells you they don't like you at all. And that's going to wash away all the others. I think it should be used as a tool for whatever you're trying to achieve. And as writers, we are told we need to have a good social media following. Publishers want that, et cetera, et cetera. Although I after evaluating all the options, I chose to self-publish so that I would have more control over things. But still, it's important to grow when you're trying to get your message out. My mission is to save 1 million lives in the next 10 years. So I can't do that without social media.
Right.
So it's an important tool, but it's not a good source of affirmations. That's for sure.
Right. And that's just talking about adults, but we think about, like, I won't allow my 13-year-old on most social media. I don't think it's beneficial. I don't think it's helpful. I think they're very fragile at that point in their lives.
Yes. And yes. And also, she's lucky to have a father that cares enough to set that boundary for her and to explain to her, why you don't want her to become totally absorbed with it, because she can become addicted, because kids do say and do things because their brains haven't developed enough yet to see the long-term consequences of what they say and do on there, and so on and so on and so on. So it's not the best affirmation she will ever get is from making good decisions about herself. And that would be a good decision. I'm not giving my power and control over to this, because this isn't the real world. And it's so easy to say and do things that you really don't know what you're saying and doing or mean or understand the consequences of. So until you're old enough, we're going to have, very limited access to this.
Yeah, I and even as an adult, I've caught myself doing things online, not too bad, but bad enough, doing things online that I would never say to somebody's face,
right,
here and there. And I remember I did that, and it's like, you wake up the next morning hungover, so to speak. But I wake up the next morning and I look at Twitter and I go, why did I say that? Why did I do that?
Right.
But I was getting out whatever venting I needed to on this stranger, and it's not good. And I wasn't proud of it. And or maybe I made a point, but I made it in a way that looked like I was a total jerk, and I could have thought about a better way to make my point. And boy, please don't get again, Dr. Donna, don't get the idea that I'm this troll out there doing that. But I'm fairly sensitive. We've all done it.
We've all, that's the problem with texting and emailing and social media. I got to get this out. And so, yes, it's a good thing you're getting it out, but not the way you're getting it out is not good.
It's not good.
Because there will be consequences. Yeah. Even if the consequences, oh my God, did I say that? Yeah.
That's me right there. I'm one of those people too. I'll ruminate over something dumb I said at a party for years. I'm that guy. So when I do it on Twitter or something, I'm just, oh, geez. So, but I have found that, and listeners, I hope you'll think about this if you're seeing a problem with this, but I've just found, Dr. Marks, that I have cut back on I've got a limiter on my phone that tells me how often I'm on my phone, how often I'm on each individual app, that kind of thing. And I'm really trying to like be a parent to myself about this as I am to my daughter and say, okay, you've really spent too much time doom scrolling on Twitter. You spent too much time looking at this. I am this close to just destroying Facebook altogether. I think it's a toxic environment. So I'm really glad to hear you say that just like any of these other addictive behaviors, social media is something you've really got to keep an eye on. And something you said to me though about my daughter, I'd like to just elaborate on that a little bit, where I love her enough to give her these boundaries. But that's kind of the thesis of your book, isn't it? It's that love is the answer to fighting addiction.
Absolutely. Right? I believe that every addiction is a substitute for love. And so we're confused. We don't really understand love at all. When I have that drink or that cigarette or that wonderful chewy chocolate cookie, I'm getting that feeling of, and that is not love. That's just an endorphin hit on the brain. That's all it is. But if I'm not having that sense of fulfillment and self-love, it's a very powerful substitute. So what I teach people how to do is when they're feeling like they want something, that they're trying to get something, that drink or that food or the porn or whatever, that they stop just for a minute and breathe. And then we have a whole list of alternative behaviors. In fact, I made 101 plus ways to love yourself. It's on my website at www.drdonnamarks.com. And they can download that. We have meditations, all kind of free things there, blogs and all. But to learn how to reparent yourself, as you just said, and instead of going for the chocolate pie or the sex or the drink or the pot or whatever, to do an alternative. Because when you were young, you had things that you enjoyed doing, hobbies and interests, and it totally, occupied your mind. And until you learn how to love yourself, which these are the steps to doing that, then you can't really be cured of addiction. And so replacing those behaviors with things that you do enjoy, learning how to get a good self-esteem by not going for immediate gratification and doing the best things for yourself. And then as we mentioned earlier, it's not just me. That's the problem with addiction. It's all about me. We shift from the me program to the we program. Like it's about relationships and how to have relationships that are healthy and viable and loving and safe and trusting. So it's a whole process of actually learning how to love ourselves. So many people think love is a feeling, and that's why we substitute love with addiction. But love isn't a feeling. It took effort for you to tell your daughter, no, you can't get on the social media. It'd be so much easier just to keep, you're busy, you got stuff to do, and it's a great babysitter, those social medias and phones and iPads, greatest babysitters ever, right? They don't bother me, they're happy. In fact, they don't want to be bothered. So I don't bother her, she doesn't bother me. It takes effort to say, no, we're going to have some time together. You have to read books, or you have to do other things, or we're going to go out and go for a walk. It takes time, it takes effort. When a baby's crying in the other room, the parent doesn't yell, I love you. They get up, they put forth the effort, and they take care of that child. Okay. And we have to do the same things for ourselves. We may not feel like getting up on time and being on time. We may not feel like eating healthy. We may not feel like, going to a recovery meeting. We may not feel like going to the therapist. We may not feel like talking about it again, but we do it because love is an action word. And when you act with love, especially self-love and love towards others, then you begin to feel it, and you feel it right away. And it's very empowering and very powerful.
Wow. I don't know if we could top that, Dr. Marks. That's beautiful.
That is you.
The book is Exit the Maze. Where can we find this wonderful book, Dr. Donna Marks?
You can order it right on my website or off Amazon.com.
You will find the links in our show notes. Just go to mgopod.com and you can find links to Dr. Donna Marks' book and her website. And don't forget that list of, was it 101 things to
101
to
plus ways to self-love. Yes.
to self-love. I
Yes.
love that. I'm probably only up on about 25 of those. So I need to go
Yeah.
get that list. I think that's
Yes,
a good
and
thing.
I encourage people to write, add on to the list and pay it forward to somebody else, because from the moment you wake up in the morning, you can hug your pillow or your covers, or you could just, say, wow, isn't it great that everything, in spite of how it seems so crazy out there in this room right now, there's no politicians attacking each other unless you turn on your TV.
Right.
There's no wars in my room right now. I'm safe right now, right this moment, I'm okay. And, just cozy up and feel good and fix yourself a nice, healthy meal and learn how to prepare that. It just goes on and on and on, but there's just so many ways. Call somebody and tell them you're just thinking about them. These things are actions, but they make you feel really good and really loved.
Dr. Donna Marks, I think you are going to be very beneficial for people who feel caught in this maze. And again, the book is Exit the Maze, Dr. Donna Marks. Check out mgopod.com for links. Dr. Marks, again, thanks for joining us here. I learned so much, and I'm so thrilled that you joined us here on Mysterious Goings On.
And I thank you for having me on, and I look forward to sharing your message with others.
Hi, this is Sonia Iris Lozada, host of Poetic Resurrection, and you're listening to Mysterious Goings On with Alex Greenwood.
Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget, we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading.